feeling? Ramzan Mubarak. How's Ramzan going for everyone? Everyone looks so, not everyone, quite a few of us look quite energized despite fasting. I will not call out those who don't look energized. So, as has been mentioned previously by the MC, we are going to cover what it is like right? So this year we decided, even as judges, that we are going to change things up a bit because there was a format that was being followed, for the last 3 seasons. And so this year you are going to see a lot of different changes. You are going to see us as judges experiment with different modalities, with different ways of presentation, etc., etc. So stay tuned for that. Now, the first thing that we are going to talk about is, before the stage, crafting your path, and more specifically, how is it that you select your message? Next slide, please. So, actually, before we go to, if we can go to the first slide, I would really, and if someone can take around the mic, right? If we go to the, I guess it would be nice to hear from some of the participants 2 things, right? Like, one is, why are you taking part in Voice of Community? I know someone has mentioned that because they have a fear of speaking, so they are here. But are there other reasons in the crowd? Why exactly are you here? And number 2, it would be nice for us to hear a little bit about your process so far. So, all of you have made it to this round. It means you're good speakers. We are just helping sort of maybe give you a few more tips, but you guys are already pretty good at what you do. If I may ask, if we can hear from a few volunteers, why are you here and what is your process of preparation so far as speaking is concerned?
We should have answers from those who are coming back from last year. It's really pleasing to see the determination. You haven't given up, and that's excellent. I'm seeing so many faces from last year, and we were just discussing the same thing. So I should be saying, Karibuni, welcome back to exactly where you belong, right? So that means there's a driving force as to why you're here. Exactly what we want to know. Why are you taking part in VoC? You took part last year. For those of you who are here this year, first timers, there's a reason you're here. I think there's a reason we're all here.
It's a speaking platform, so we don't expect that we need to push you guys to speak. That's exactly why you are here. So please, let's hear some answers. Yes, great. If we can have a mic, please, for...
So I'm taking part in VoC because I've always had a passion for public speaking, and I want to be a public speaker in the future as a second career. So this is another move towards my future and towards my career and towards the passion I'd like to enhance through public speaking. So I'm expecting to learn a lot and to make it to the further rounds, inshallah.
And can you tell us a little bit about your current process? Like, if you are asked to speak somewhere before participating in VoC, what was your process like? How do you prepare yourself?
So I've actually spoken somewhere before at another competition, and the process was scary because it was my first time, but I don't have anything like stage fright, so I was confident. And building speech, of course, that's where I'm weak at. For example, learning it not by heart, but like knowing it and presenting it in front of people. So that's a bit one of my weaknesses, but I'm sure that I'll get to improve through VoC this year, inshallah.
Well, I don't think that's a weakness, but we'll talk about that a little bit. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
I don't want to have to pick up someone from each table.
Yeah. And if we pick, we'll probably pick up a guy because you're few, right? So it's easy for us to spot you. So guys, either volunteer yourself or we might have to volunteer you, especially some of our returning.
We have a volunteer here.
Okay, so like the sister said, I have a passion for public speaking, but recently I have started social media as well, like the influencer type talking on social media. So now that's a different path I have taken to what it was before. So it would be nice to know how to go about, because there the audience is varied. I don't have a fixed audience, so I have maybe people who are my age, people younger than me, people who follow me. So it's very important to know how to target, a different kind of audience altogether rather than a targeted audience at one point.
Okay, and what has since you are venturing into this new space of speaking, what has been your process like so far?
It's been a very conscious process to choose what to share, what not to share, and what to speak, not to speak. But again, the effectiveness of speaking, of putting the right message across without hurting sentiments or without hurting anybody's feelings, that is a challenge that I still need to navigate.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. One last share, and please, that should be from a guy.
Otherwise, the next topic is women empowerment.
I think we'll have to pick one out now.
Please
Do
help
the
us.
Hani, I'm sorry, but your name is just there.
Okay, so the reason I think that I'm taking part in VoC is something to do with my own personal growth. I've been in this since the first season. The first season I was out before the semifinals. The second season I was out in the semifinals. The third season last year I was a finalist. And well, if everything keeps going, hopefully I should be the one to win this year. So it's just a own personal growth thing. It's like a journey for me. And hopefully I can end on a peak.
And your process, since you are clearly a veteran here, what has your process been like?
Honestly, everything just comes naturally to me. I feel like I'm a bit of a natural. So as long as nothing is forced, as long as everything is natural to me, I feel like whatever is like, that's my safe space, you can say. Like whenever everything is natural. So as long as everything is not forced, the process just goes smoothly.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, for us, I think this is important because it's for you to get to know each other. We really want you all to sort of learn from each other, coordinate with each other and grow together. But then it's also for us to understand, the kinds of people, the kinds of speakers that we have. We were unfortunately not there during the audition, so we didn't get the opportunity to hear. Yes, some of you are, not new, but I think every year, even if you are a repeat participant, you come with something new for us as judges. So this is just sort of a level setter for us. Now, the first thing that we are going to talk about is selecting your message, right? When you are trying to speak, when you are trying to convey something, how is it that you select your message, right? You've told us you are here at VoC for certain reasons. There are certain things that you want to learn. There are certain, things you want to achieve. But in order for you to achieve that, there are certain messages that you are going to sort of pass through, etc. They say the point of communication is to be understood. Right? You have to, communication, if it is only one-sided, is not successful. So there has to be some thought process around what do I do or what do I convey so that it is understood, right? And so this is where there are elements of things such as the appropriateness of the topic for your audience. Someone mentioned that they are trying to get into social media, and so they are trying to think about, okay, what is a good message to put here, what is not, how do I put it, etc. Passion is extremely important. What is it that you are passionate about? Because it is what you authentically feel is what you will best be able to convey, right? So if you have the opportunity to select a message, to select a topic, which you will have, especially in the next round, pick something that is true to you. Pick something that you can relate with, right? Don't pick buzzwords. Don't pick, in fact, if I may have the luxury of saying this, I would really like to discourage people from talking about the evils of social media, because I think over the last 3 seasons, we've heard that topic 50 times. If you are going to speak about it, try to think about how do I put a different spin to it, right? Maybe go through the previous talks, etc. But think about that, right? Because there are certain topics that people pick because they're common, we hear about them a lot, etc. So think about how you can do things differently, and think about what do you want your audience to take home? What is the message? And we'll talk a little bit about that when we go to the structuring.
So if I can just add, if you notice, we've been highlighting the word audience a couple of times, even when we're talking to you. So when you're up here, it's not just what the judges want to see or the judges want to hear. When you're selecting your topic, yes, we say always choose something that you're comfortable talking about, but also try to step out of your comfort zone, because that will push you to research something new. You will start looking for guidance, for facts. You will learn something new, and it will show the authenticity because you'll be so passionate when you come up here to talk about it. So don't just stick to your comfort zone. Like Farhan said, we've heard certain topics repeat every consecutive year. As judges, we're really looking for something new, something to tickle curiosity, something to ignite passion within us to learn from you. And here I'm just going to share something that Farhan has done to me this year, and I don't forgive you for that. When we were discussing the layout for today and how the judges are going to talk and how to give it a different twist, so it's not just what we expect from you, we're expecting something different from us as well, right? We don't want it to be monotonous like it is every year. My comfort isn't pre-stage. Yeah, what I'm doing right now is telling you what you need to do before you come onto the stage. I feel the stage is my comfort zone and my platform. And before I could say anything at the meeting, Farhan is like, okay, Zohraida and I are going to talk what we need to do before we're on the stage. And I'm like, do I have an option? Are you asking or are you telling me? He's like, no, I've said it. I'm like, oh, okay. So I said nothing out of respect. And I told him, I don't like you for what you've done to me. He's like, okay, step out of your comfort zone, because you keep saying that to everyone. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I need to do. That's exactly what I've done. I didn't think that I had the ability to do what I will be doing for the next couple of minutes, right? So thank you for that, Farhan. But I'm guessing that today you're going to be my judge for me. And then I won't mind comments from you as well, if I've been impactful with what I've given you today, and if there's something I can rectify. And I'll ask my judges for that as well. Yeah? Okay.
And I mean, this is, Zohraida probably doesn't realize this, but this is difficult for me as well, because I thrive in the impromptu. I'm an impromptu speaker, and later on, Zohraida will take you through some rehearsal strategies, etc. Usually, I don't do any of that. Like, I am not a speak in front of the mirror guy, or, I love coming onto the stage and, just speaking my mind. So it's a little bit of me being outside my comfort zone as well, and hopefully, the whole point of this is to show you guys that, there are different ways to be able to do this. Now, just quickly talking through the public speaking process, the way you should be thinking about it, and this we thought was a helpful sort of diagram that might, it's ideally, you thinking about preparation, practice, presentation, the 3 P's, right? Like, that's what you need to think about. How do you prepare yourself, which is what we are covering here, and a little bit of the practice as well in the rehearsal. Then we will go to the second part, which will be the presentation, and you'll get a lot of skills on how to do that on the stage here. But it's basically that cycle, right? And after you present, you basically, the next time you learn, how do I need to change my preparation? What do I need to change? What do I need to tweak? Present, learn, it's a cyclical sort of process. And also thinking about within that, there is an inner circle or an inner triangle that talks about you, your content, and the audience. So how do you think about you? How do you prepare your content? And then how do you relate it to your audience? So these are, sort of things to think about that helps you understand the process a bit better. Okay, so also, if there are any, I know there's a Q&A at the end, but if there are any burning questions, please feel free to, we really want to make it engaging for you guys, so please feel free to, reach out. And then ultimately, you also, when you are selecting your message, you need to think about what is the purpose of your speech, right? What is it that you are trying to do through your message, through whatever it is that you are speaking? And so there's different things that speeches can do. One is to inform, right? So if you are giving people information, you are telling them about something, maybe you are teaching them, and that will have its own sort of way, that will have its own structure, that will have its own delivery, that will have its own audience. Then some speeches are to inspire. We know how many motivational speakers we have, currently, and that becomes a very different sort of, avenue for us to think about. To instruct, I guess this is, to inform and to instruct can be both sort of teaching, but to instruct becomes a bit more structured, the way a teacher would, with steps, etc., which is a bit different from information. Bye.
Right, so if I can personally tell you something, instruct is something I really wouldn't use much, but during your talk you might want to lay out something that is giving simple instructions to someone for the thought process. For me, any talk needs to inspire, it needs to persuade me to believe something, it needs to entertain, and when I say entertain, it doesn't necessarily mean humor. It means, sorry, is it okay to move? So it literally means to have the person so closely and passionately listening to you, you entice someone. So the way I'm talking right now, I'm not trying to entice you, but I have everyone looking at me. That's what you want when you're up there talking. You don't want someone busy doodling because they find the topic uninteresting or because it's something they've already heard. It needs to be very engaging. So whatever your speech is about, try and have all of these. For me personally, I have used two of them a lot, and that's inspiring and persuading. I like challenges. I believe and I know that challenges is what makes us who we are, right? Every time you fall, you stand up stronger. Those of you who are here for the second year, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So this time, you're here to persuade us. Something might have missed last time when you were talking, but this time you are going to persuade and you're going to inspire. And maybe there was some information that was missing. You had feedback from us. A lot of you did have a talk with us at the end of it. So we gave you the information, and now you're here to inform us as well, right? Instructing, again, I would say there is just a pointer or two where you might want to say, please close your eyes and go where I'm taking you. Now, those are simple instructions. In a talk, you don't want to say, listen to me now. I'm going to say something, you need to memorize it. That's not what I'm talking about, all the students who are in this room, right? Do I sound like one of your school teachers already? Yeah, I am a teacher, so it's going to reflect a little bit, right? And entertaining, what we're talking about is a little bit of humor, like I just dropped some, right? And I'm going to give it to Farhan, and I'm going to come back later on.
Aspects, which is thinking about research and what sort of research you need to do, and then figuring out how to structure, is it what you are saying. Before I get into that, however, I would like to start with a little bit of my, I feel like I keep on saying this every time I have an opportunity, and that is that I don't like the term public speaking because it basically makes it sound more complex than it should be, and I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from. I know Shirin Bhai always comes and talks about what that fear is, so I'll leave that for her, but there's always this element of, the moment you say public speaking, people are like, oh my God, I'm going to be speaking in front of a crowd, and what are they going to think of it? I am always a big proponent of us just calling it speaking, right? Like, let's just call it speaking, because speaking is a skill that you will use in your everyday life, whether it is an interview, whether it is a meeting at work, whether it is in the classroom, whether it is in your friends gathering, in your family gathering. Ideally, what you're trying to learn is, how do I effectively speak wherever I am, right? So I always urge people, move away from thinking about it as public speaking and just think about how you can become an effective speaker regardless of what your audience is, right? So I just wanted to start off with that. Now, when it comes to in-depth research or research as a part of preparation for, whatever it is that you want to speak, I usually like to think of it in 5 different ways. The first thing is that you need to start by researching within you, right? Researching about yourself, researching about who you are, right? And I feel like that is an element that a lot of people don't usually talk about. And that's where it starts. I think what helps us sort of grow, even in the art of speaking, is knowing, what kind of speaker am I? Yes, there is always that point of going outside of your comfort zone, but how do you do that if you don't even know what your comfort zone is, right? So the first point of research that I always talk about is start by researching about yourself. What is my style? How do I, like I said, for me, I know I prefer impromptu and I'm not someone who would, so a story related to that, because we like sharing stories, was that I would shy away from being a TEDx speaker because of that reason. Because I am such an impromptu speaker, when people used to tell me you should participate and give a TED talk, for years I kept putting it down, because for me, you know, so for anyone who's organized a TED talk or has participated in one, you know how meticulous they are, right? Like from how you're going to stand on the stage to what your slides will look like, how much time you're going to take. I am not comfortable with that at all. Like, I'm the guy, you pick me from a chair, tell me go stand on the stage and talk about something, and I'll do that with no issues. But the moment you tell me to sit and start preparing, and it just doesn't sit with me. So it took me a long time to sort of reach a point where I was like, you know what, let's try something new, as Zohraida said as well. Let's do something new. Let's take on a new challenge. And so I did give a TED talk a few years ago. And so what helped me with that though is knowing who I am, knowing what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, and then being able to sort of, okay, if I'm put in a different situation, what do I do? How do I prepare myself? So first of all, please start by searching within yourself. I think not many of us do that enough, right? The second thing, as far as research is concerned, is researching now about, we've spoken about picking your subject. Now the second bit of research is researching your content, right? What is it that you are going to put within your speech? And by the way, content is king. Let no one sort of, and I say this also having been a part of VoC for the last 3 years, I know as judges, and I used to be the host before, we used to see a lot of sort of deliveries where people would, and some of that goes to credit of some of our judges, they make X factor and presentation skills sound so amazing that I feel like sometimes people leave the content behind, and they think that even if I don't prepare, or if I come in last moment, or as long as I have the pizzazz, I'll do it, right? And that has actually led to some people not winning or not getting something, because your content needs to be there first. That's your first thing that you need to work on. So as you guys pick your topic, especially for the next round, finals will be slightly different, but for the next round, please, once you select your message, think about your content, talk to people, watch things, read things. Like, again, I won't go into the details of how, because that can be a whole other session in itself, but just thinking about what is my content going to be? How do I make it gripping? What do I talk about? What will be new for people to understand? And from that, the third element of research is researching your audience, right? You need to think about who your audience is going to be. A speech that you give in a university is very different from a speech that you would give on the streets, is very different from a speech that you would give in a nursery or a primary school. It's very important to think about who your audience is going to be. Now, ideally, I don't think you can fully predict how people are going to take your speech or whatever, and that's something that I would say not to think about a lot, because it can be crippling, right? We live in a world today where, and I was watching a video yesterday, someone's interview, where it was like, I can say this ceiling is so beautiful and it's going to offend someone. Like someone is going to be like, you're showing off your ceiling. I don't have a ceiling. And now, so the point being that we live in a world where everyone has an opinion about everything. So think about your audience, find out who they are, who they're going to be, very generally, age dynamics, geographic location, whatever. Of course, this process will also depend on, how, if you're going for a job interview, the way you think about your audience is very different from a competition like this. So, but thinking a little bit about your audience so that you are not caught off guard, right? Like you're not talking about a scientific theorem in a nursery school. Right? And it seems pretty obvious, but it takes conscious thought. You need to think about it consciously. Once you identify your audience, the best you do is what will resonate with them? What will they connect with? What are they going to take home? Why am I giving this message to them? So very important to think about all these different elements of your audience, but without being crippled by it. Because I've also seen speakers because that's where the nervousness comes from, right? The nervousness comes from the people. Everyone speaks at home, in front of the mirror, in the bathroom, wherever, in the kitchen, wherever you get an opportunity. The issue is the audience. So if you take it too seriously and you sort of worry about it too much, then that's where the fear comes from. Understand your audience, prepare yourself, and then the other judges will tell you what to do if you come on the stage and find the audience has changed completely. Luckily, I'm not covering that, right? So that would be point number 2 as far as research is concerned. Point number 3, research your venue. Where are you going to speak? What is the environment going to be like? How many of us have gone to talks and found technology challenges? The mic is not working, and this is PowerPoint, there's no projector. You thought there was a projector, so you came with a PowerPoint presentation, and now there isn't one, and you're caught off guard. So think about your venue. Where is it that you are going to be speaking? What does it look like? Look at the space. I don't know if some of you noticed, before we started, 3 of us judges came up and we are like, okay, what does this stage feel like? Can we all stand on it? There's a reason why I'm standing on this side, because that side is a bit shaky and I don't want to tumble over. But those are the things that you do, right? Like, you need to come into a space, and you guys are lucky that I believe we'll be using the same venue for the whole program. And so from today, start thinking about what this space looks like, what the stage feels like. Start picturing that, start preparing yourself for that, and think about how that will affect what you will speak about, right? And so moving from that, aspect number 4 that you need to research on is what modality are you going to use, right? And if you see today, that's what we've sort of tried to do, at least I know I did, that, we have a PowerPoint, so you see that you can use a PowerPoint. I came with a piece of paper that's right now on the floor that I'm referring to, so there's different modalities that you can use to deliver what it is that you want to say. Research on that. Try to align that with your audience, with your topic. Again, a PowerPoint slide would probably be great for a scientific theorem, but it probably wouldn't be great maybe if you're trying to tell a personal story, right? Because sometimes people will tell you that PowerPoint slides can get distracting. If people are looking at the PowerPoint, then they're not listening to you. So again, think about what modality are you going to use to deliver your message? What are you going to do? 5, see? So 5 things to think about. Research within, research about yourself, research your audience, research your venue, research your modality, and content, audience, venue, modality. Yes, finally. But yeah, so those are the 5 things to think about. However, one thing that I also always convey to people, and that is where I think it will lie more in part 2, is that be ready for surprises. We live in a very unpredictable world. We weren't expecting the rain today. When we came in here, TANESCO could have done their thing today and we wouldn't have had the PowerPoint or the air condition or the lights, everything, right? So as a speaker, especially as a good speaker, as much as you will think about preparation, also think about what happens if all the preparation I've done goes, things change. So don't get prepared. So I function on a principle of balance as a human being. And so prepare to your best, but then also be ready for what happens when all of that goes down the drain, right? As a good speaker, you will be able to make the best of whatever. If you've done enough research, it helps you, right? Like, for example, if you know this venue and you came in and you realized, oh, there's no power. Yes, there is no power, but if you've gauged the place enough, you'll know where to stand so people can hear what you're saying. You will know where to stand so people can see you properly despite there not being lights or PowerPoint. So the more you prepare, the better it helps you sort of deal with unpredictability, but always remember that there will be unpredictability. You can only control it to a certain factor, right? So, any questions about that?
That the speaker says that it's important for you to match the energy of your audience. Now, for a competition like that, or let's say for any other venue that you're going to, or any other occasion, you might not necessarily have the liberty to know your audience that well. Then how exactly do you think we can match the energy of the audience, or sort of read the room so that we can deliver our content much better?
Okay, so thank you so much for that. So I think that again comes under, like I said, right, like there will always be situations where you will have to sort of be impromptu and think about it, right? It's all about, I think ultimately you need to try and be as quick on your feet as you can. So when you get into a room, and I feel like that's more again part 2 thing, but I'll try to talk about it a little bit here. But when you get into a room and you see a crowd that you don't know, right? There will always, so there's different techniques you can use for that. For example, look for whoever looks the friendliest, right, in the room, and look at them, so that you don't need to necessarily match everyone's energy, but find an anchor. There is always someone there. So I, by the way, am a great anchor. I've been told that by people because I nod my head like crazy. And so I have actually noticed that when I go into into sessions, I have actually seen speakers just looking at me because I give them the validation of like, I know what you're saying. So you'll always find those people, right? Like you'll see that in the crowd. So find your anchor, whatever it is that helps you get through that phase. So thank you for that. We'll cover more questions at the end, I think, after a bit more comprehensive discussion on everything else. Now, the next part that I was supposed to cover is about structuring how you are going to deliver. Once again, a lot of difference, a lot of nuance depending on what you're doing, where you're doing, what you're talking about, where you're talking about it. But general principle is that, as we said before, if you've done your research, if you've selected a message that's good enough, then it's a matter of sitting and thinking about, okay, what's the best way that I can structure my content, that I can prepare and then be able to deliver it. And we'll talk a little bit about delivering. But as far as structuring is concerned, I think the basic principle is that you really need to think about 3 things: your opening, your body, and your closing. Not rocket science, it's not complicated at all. It's these 3 things that you need to think about. Your opening needs to be impactful. Your opening needs to, they say it needs to hook people. How is it that you start off in a way that grabs people's attention? The one thing to think about is that, especially in today's time and age, people's attention spans are very small. People get bored very easily. People move on from you very easily. So you need to think about, how do I get people's attention? What is it that's going to, and some of that has to do with the way you'll come into stage, whether you're, dressed up a certain way, etc. And so there are those nuances. But as far as when you are preparing is concerned, a lot of it is about, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it, right? So good things to think about are starting with a story helps, because it makes people sort of relate to you, it gets their attention. Very effective tool that a lot of public speakers use is just to start with a relatable story. Some people like to start with a question or end with a question, and we'll talk about that in the conclusion, but you can start by a question. Start by engaging your audience, something that I guess you all noticed we did here as well. We started talking with a few of you, because again, it creates that relatability. The crowd feels like you're not far away from them, right? So do that, figure out, again, it will largely depend on who your audience is, but these are some of the things to think about. How do I hook people? What do I say? How do I start? You know, people sometimes start with skits, with, you know, short dramas, even in their speeches. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can do it, but think about your opening, extremely important as far as attention is concerned. The second part is the body. That's the meat of your talk now, right? Like that's where you are going to truly convey what your thought processes are about a particular topic. How do you feel? That's primarily your message. And so think about that in terms of what language are you going to use. Don't use jargon. We've seen that sometimes people use fancy words because they want, you know, to look like they're a thesaurus, but it doesn't help, right? Like if it's going to disengage your audience, remember, it's more about your audience than it is about you at that point of time. It will only become about you through your audiences. If you put in a good message that your audiences understand, that's when your speech will become remarkable. But it has to pass through that channel. It's not just about, I know I have prepared well, I'll come and I'll deliver it a certain way and everyone will love it. No, it's really about the people. So think about how you're going to structure your talk. Again, you know, asking questions, engaging people, thinking about the language that you're using, incorporating certain stories within that structure as well. You know, talking about your personal experiences helps a lot, because when you think about telling stories, you can either tell someone else's story or you can tell your own story. So thinking about those differences and when to use what, right? Telling your own story has a very big impact, and I would suggest you go and watch some of the finalist speeches, because I know in the past we've seen some amazing, you know, people giving their talks with very personal stories that were very gripping for the audience. So it really helps for you to sort of put that down. Also think about how do you make it flow properly, right? Like there has to be a flow to what you are saying. You can't start the earth and the star and the sun and the moon and the car and the, no, like think about how is it that you can structure your talk in a way that makes sense, that flows, that, you know, takes your audience with you on a journey, right? Think about it that way. Think about how you structure it. I can't think of anything else that I want to add there. So the last thing, which is also something that I feel over the years we've seen people miss out on a lot, is your conclusion, right? And that somehow is related to your delivery of how you do it, because we've seen circumstances where people run out of time and then they have to rush and just end it. But it's very important for you to, because that is your take-home message. You can have an amazing opening, a very good body of your content, but if you don't leave people with take-home messages or with what you finally wanted the impact of your talk to be, or what your sort of final closing opinion is, then you leave people hanging and they are like, wait, like how did this end? Where did this end? Like what happened? You're almost leaving people on a cliffhanger, which works great for movies and series, but not so much for talks, right? Especially if you get just one opportunity. So think about how you are going to end. And it doesn't need to be, because some people take that literally and then they are like, I would like to conclude. I mean, you can say that, but it doesn't need to be that obvious either. Again, when you're thinking about the flow, think about how you're going to end your talk in a way where you're summarizing everything, you're conveying your message, but it's not in an obvious, you know, like reading textbook sort of way where you are like, yeah, now I'm closing this speech, so as I close this speech, I would love to tell you all. No, like it doesn't need to be that way. Think about how you can flow and close with an impact. Again, closing with questions helps. You know, it helps for people to think about what is it that they sort of take away with them. You can even engage the audience and, you know, sort of think about, you know, what do you think is your takeaway from this particular talk of mine? and then incorporate that into your closing. So think about how exactly is it that you are going to close. Now, all this, your structure goes in tandem with your presentation. And so think about all of this, think about creating a blueprint for your talk, your speech, whatever it is, and then you are going to marry it with your presentation skills. There are two parts, but they need to really come together. The other thing about the preparation part is that it relates very much to the modality aspect, in that your structure will be dependent also on the modality that you have picked. And do not shy away from using tools, right? Some people think memorizing is the best. I heard someone, and that's why I was like, I don't think not being able to memorize is a weakness. It's just that it's not something that you are comfortable with. I'm not good at memorizing either whenever I try that, but you can use tools to help you. So you will see people have cue cards, people have PowerPoints. I came with a piece of paper that I should probably pick up now. But there are different tools that you can use to help you follow the structure that you have prepared. It doesn't need to be all up here, right? Competitions are not about who came and spoke like a parrot and delivered like a speech without taking a breath. Like, my name is Farhan, I'm here to talk to you about public speaking. Public speaking is amazing, this is how you prepare. No, that's not how it works. That will very quickly disengage your audience. Think about what tools you can use, and actually that's one of the reasons why I came with a paper, was just to show that you can do it. I move my hands a lot, so I decided to keep it down, otherwise it would have probably flown away at some point and I'd have to run behind it. But you can hold it in your hand, as long as you don't use those tools as a crutch. Do not get dependent on them. And that is why, do not memorize to the point where if your paper were to disappear, you would come here and not be able to say anything. If you guys saw, at some point I was hardly looking at the paper. It was just here in case I forget something, in case I'm thinking about certain points, but it doesn't have to be your crutch. So do not do that. As you are preparing and you are preparing your content, think about what tool will aid you in delivering that content with your design structure in the best way possible, but without getting dependent on it in any other way. I think lastly, what I wanted to say is that preparation is great, and we are going to talk about more, Zohraida will come in and talk about that, but speaking is a muscle. You grow it, right? And you grow it by doing it. I know a lot of people who have watched a lot of YouTube videos about public speaking and motivational speakers, and they have read books about public speaking. That doesn't necessarily make them a good public speaker, because they don't practice, they don't try out, they don't put themselves out here to speak with people. The first time I started getting comfortable with public speaking, I was talking somewhere and I was shivering so much that the paper fell down from my hands. That was the first time. Usually when I say that to people, they're like, that makes no sense. Look at how you're talking right now. But that's where I came from, right? It comes from putting yourself out there, practicing, learning. You're going to make mistakes. By the way, all of us here are learning. Every judge here will tell you that. We have a bit more exposure, I guess, which is why we are sitting on these chairs. But it doesn't make us quote-unquote experts. There might be some people here in the crowd who've spoken more than we have, who have the right set of skill sets, So we are all learning here together, and the best way to learn, the best way to keep growing your speaking muscle is by doing it. So prepare, yes, but then make sure you're also delivering. Don't get so stuck on preparation. We've had, for example, in certain years, and I like being very candid about some of these things, we've had VoCs in the past where people come for the masterclass and they realize, this is such a big task and we won't be able to do it, and then they don't show up the next week to participate. It has happened, right? I really hope it doesn't happen this year. I would not like for it to happen, so don't get so caught up in the preparation that you don't want to get the experience of it. The experience of it is more important than the preparation, right? Prepare well so that your experience becomes better, but the experience is the more important thing. So on that note, I think I am going to stop. I was also trying to keep time. I think I'm good with it. So Zohraida bhai, if you can come on.